Hi, I'm Curtis Lilly, the pastor at Discovery Church in Livermore. I just finished my 6th year here, and when I think about reporting on our ministry for the year, I like to think in big themes and in movements, and in many ways, I have a feeling and working with our board members, we have this same sense that this last year I'm really was a transition year for us. In some ways, it's hard to say that before we've really transitioned, but by all signs, that's really what we are working through. Here's what that means. 6 years ago, when I started, we were a church that was considering closing its doors. We were in a really, really rough place. By all measurements, we were near death and had certainly been dying for some period of time. That is not the case anymore, and that's why we talk about this last year being a year of transition. We really spent my first 5 years here allowing God to nurture this congregation back to life. And at the beginning of this last year, we had this opportunity to hear testimonies of where people had seen God at work in our church in the last year, and over and over again, people were saying that this is the healthiest they've seen this church in decades. And that's just powerful, especially knowing where we were just 6 years ago. But one of the things that we discovered together is that the values, the priorities, the strategy for walking with a church out of near death and into some sort of stability is a different set of values and strategies, and taking a church that's healthy and moving out into a really intentional mission. And so that's the shift that we have been wrestling with and attempting to make this year, trying to name, okay, what are the things that we need to be doing going into this next year? How do we begin to take steps of faith out of just living and being stable and having survived and moving out in new ways? And I think in some ways I hate talking about money as symbolic of this, but in many ways it is, because it was it's such a powerful symbol of who we were when we were dying, and in many ways who we are now. And here's why. When we were dying, we were obsessed with our building. We were obsessed with our finances. And as you can imagine, as most dying churches are, we were in rough shape, and our finances were our obsession. Part of our church finding new life has been a reordering of our priorities, so that in every board meeting and every conversation about church and ministry, money is almost always like the last thing we talk about. After we've talked about people and those in our care and how we're discipling them and how we're engaged in mission. And as we look at this last transition year and moving into the future, for the first time in 6 years, more years, we are not in a place of financial crisis. We are not trying to figure out how we're going to pay our next budgets. We're also not having to take up special offerings anymore in order to just fund basic ministry. And so this is huge for us. And just in this last year, we've begun to invest more money in global mission, in our own staffing, and hopefully this next year we've got some ideas about where we can begin to invest some money locally as we follow God in mission. And so this is a good time for us. It's a time of excitement and energy as we have celebrated where God has brought us, as we've spent this real time of discernment, and we look forward to the future. Peace.